All right, ever picture yourself like facing down a wall of bronze and red, just this like unbreakable line of just disciplined warriors.
Yeah.
That was the reality. I mean, that's what it was like for anybody going up against the Spartan army back in ancient Greece.
Right.
So today we're going to do a deep dive into ancient Greek warfare.
Okay.
We're talking hoplites.
Yeah.
We're talking the rise of the Spartans and, of course, those battles that made them legendary.
Mm-hmm.
And to guide us through all this, we're going to be looking at an interview with Roel Koenenendijk.
Okay.
He's an expert in classical Greek warfare from Oxford.
Oh, wow.
And this was on Dan Snow's History Hit podcast.
Okay, great.
So what's interesting to me is, we're not just talking about like formations and tactics here, right? We're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about like how culture and psychology
Yeah.
and even a little bit of vanity
Interesting.
all played into, how the Greeks fought and won their wars.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it's a part of warfare that I think is often forgotten.
Vanity.
Yes, exactly. But let's set the stage first a bit. We're talking about ancient Greece, right?
Right.
A bunch of city-states always fighting for power.
Yeah.
Threats from all sides, not just other Greeks, but also, massive empires like Persia looming out there.
Yeah, yeah, always something going on. So this is where we see the rise of the hoplites. These heavily armed infantrymen. I mean, they were the backbone of every Greek army.
Absolutely, yeah. And these weren't just, sort of conscripts or whatever. These were citizens, often from, the wealthier classes,
Yeah.
who took enormous pride in their equipment.
Mm-hmm.
They embodied Greek values.
Yeah.
They were fighting for the glory of their city-state.
I mean, you can almost picture them like, the rock stars of their day, right?
Very
With
well.
those like iconic bronze helmets and shields. I mean, it's fascinating to me that they prioritize this whole visual element.
Yeah.
Even when, like iron was actually way more practical, right? Right. Absolutely. That visual aspect was crucial, especially when you start looking at the clash of styles between the Greeks and the Persians.
Okay.
The Persians, they were all about ranged combat and cavalry, a much more, I guess, fluid and adaptable kind of approach.
Yeah.
Whereas the Greeks, well, they were all about that aggressive close quarters combat, relying on the just sheer power of their charge.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of the famous Greek charge,
Right.
like take the Battle of Marathon, 480 BC. The Athenians, I mean, they're outnumbered, but they just surprised the Persians with this like full frontal assault, a bold move.
It was. And, it became a real hallmark of Greek warfare.
Yeah.
But that charge, it wasn't just about brute force, though.
Yeah.
Like, there was huge psychological weight behind it, too. I mean, just imagine, you're facing this wall of bronze and flesh just hurtling toward you.
Oh, yeah.
It was meant to disrupt those Persian formations. The Persians, they like to plan things out carefully.
Yeah.
And this forced them to react, not to think strategically.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like the Greeks, they were not afraid to get up close and personal
They were not.
on the battlefield. Now, where do the Spartans fit into all of this?
Mm-hmm. Ah, yes. The Spartans. Well, I mean, I think everyone knows about their discipline and their military prowess, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows about the Spartans.
They took Greek warfare to a whole other level.
Okay.
They perfected unit organization, marching in sync, just incredible discipline, unmatched by any other city-state.
Yeah.
I mean, they even used flute players to maintain rhythm during marches.
Wow. That's dedication to keeping in step. So it wasn't just about individual skill. It was about the collective
Right.
moving as one.
Precisely. And remember those bronze-faced shields and the matching red tunics? Well, that visual uniformity, that served a crucial purpose, too.
Okay.
It projected this image of a single unstoppable force. It added this whole other, psychological dimension to their combat prowess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like everything from their training to their outfits to their shields.
Yeah.
It was all about maximizing their impact
Exactly.
on the battlefield. But why couldn't other Greek city-states replicate this?
Right.
Was it just about stricter training or something?
Well, I mean, training was part of it, sure.
Yeah.
But it goes deeper than that. Spartan culture, it instilled obedience from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Other Greeks, they valued their individual freedom.
Yeah.
They resisted rigid orders. They weren't as keen on being told what to do
Yeah.
on the battlefield. And that made it tough to get that same level of uniformity and discipline.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine it's like trying to impose a single strategy on a bunch of people who are used to just doing their own thing.
Absolutely.
But that unwavering Spartan discipline, I mean, that's what forged their reputation in battles like Thermopylae.
Ugh, Thermopylae. 480 BC. It's like
Right.
the ultimate underdog story. Even though the Spartans lost,
Yeah.
that valiant last stand against the Persians,
Yeah.
it just solidified their image as warriors of unmatched courage, willing to die for their cause.
Yeah. It's a story that, I mean, that still captures the imagination,
Yeah.
a testament to their bravery.
Mm-hmm.
But the Spartans, they weren't just about blind courage.
No,
I mean, they were incredibly skilled tacticians, too.
that's right.
And we see that in the Battle of Nemea, 394 BC.
Oh yeah, Nemea is a great example of their strategic thinking. They showed a real mastery of battlefield awareness and unit cohesion.
Okay.
You know, they were willing to make tough choices, even sacrifice allies
Wow.
to gain a strategic advantage. They outmaneuvered the Athenians.
So the Spartans,
Ah,
masters of discipline, uniformity, tactical brilliance. I mean, for a time, they were the undisputed champion
you were.
of the Greek world. But history often shows us nobody stays on top forever. And for the Spartans, the end of their dominance came at the hands of a seemingly unlikely adversary,
Okay.
the Thebans.
You know, the rise of Thebes it's really one of the most fascinating chapters in Greek military history. I mean, it's the classic David versus Goliath story,
Right.
right? This seemingly weaker force. I mean, they topple a giant
Yeah.
through careful observation, adaptation. It's fascinating.
It's intriguing, how they managed to overcome the Spartan war machine, right?
Okay.
What was their secret? Did they try to out-Spartan the Spartans?
Not exactly. I mean, the Thebans, they recognized that trying to beat the Spartans at their own game, copying their discipline and formations,
Yeah.
that was a losing strategy. They needed a different approach.
Okay, so it was about finding a weakness in the Spartan system.
Precisely. The Thebans, I mean, they studied Spartan tactics meticulously. They acknowledged their strengths, but they focused on identifying and exploiting their vulnerabilities.
Okay.
They understood that while formidable, that Spartan discipline, it could become a liability under the right circumstances.
So it's like every strength, when taken to an extreme, can also become a weakness.
That's right.
So how did they capitalize on this? How they use this?
Well, the Battle of Leuctra, 371 BC, I think is a perfect example.
Okay.
So they were aware, the Thebans, they were aware of this Spartan practice of deploying their strongest forces on the right wing, right, led by their king.
Okay.
So instead of, just spreading their troops evenly, they concentrated their elite warriors, the Sacred Band, on their left wing, directly opposite the Spartan king.
Okay, that's bold. That's a bold move. I mean, concentrating your forces like that. What was the thinking? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, they were aiming to disrupt the head of the snake, so to speak. They targeted the Spartan king, the command structure, hoping to throw the entire Spartan force into disarray. Discipline without clear leadership, it can quickly turn into chaos.
Right.
Panic.
Yeah, it's almost like a targeted form of attack.
Right. It is.
You're aiming for the heart.
You are. And they reinforced this strategy with another tactical innovation.
Okay.
They deployed a really deep formation.
Okay.
Some accounts, I mean, they say up to 50 men deep.
Wow.
Essentially, I mean, they created this massive battering ram.
Yeah.
This depth, it provided overwhelming force, but it also boosted morale, right? I mean, imagine fighting shoulder to shoulder with dozens of your comrades behind you.
Yeah, it's going to be intimidating.
It must have been an intimidating sight for the Spartans.
Yeah, it's fascinating how that psychological element combines with just the physical tactic, right? The actual, thing of it.
And it worked. It worked brilliantly. At Leuctra, the Thebans just smashed through that Spartan right wing, killed the king.
Wow.
Just sent shockwaves through the Spartan ranks. That usually reliable Spartan discipline,
Yeah.
without clear leadership, I mean, it dissolved into confusion and panic.
Wow.
The Spartans were routed. Their aura of invincibility, it was shattered.
Wow. What a stunning victory.
It was.
it's like they achieved the unthinkable, right?
It did.
By understanding like both the strengths and the weaknesses
Exactly.
of the Spartans. I mean, they outmaneuvered them, they outsmarted them.
They did. And Leuctra, it marked a real turning point, I think,
Yep.
in Greek military history. It proved that the Spartans weren't invincible.
Right.
That their rigid system, while formidable, it could be exploited.
Yeah.
It highlighted the importance of adaptability, of strategic thinking in warfare.
Yeah, it's a lesson that goes way beyond the battlefield too, right?
It does, yeah.
Just adaptability, willingness to challenge the status quo, to challenge what everyone thinks is how it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, that can lead to breakthroughs,
right?
Even against these seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
That's right.
But wasn't the Theban victory like kind of short-lived?
You're right. Their triumph was significant, but it didn't usher in a new era of Theban dominance or anything.
Okay.
There was another force on the rise.
Okay.
One that had been watching all these conflicts, learning from both Spartan discipline and Theban innovation.
Okay.
And that was Macedon.
Okay.
Under the leadership of Philip II, and later, of course, his son Alexander the Great.
So we've seen the rise and fall of Sparta, this surprise victory of the Thebans.
Yeah.
And now we turn our attention north to Macedon. A kingdom that's often seen as being like on the edge of the Greek world.
Right.
But they were destined to completely reshape it.
They were, yeah. Macedon is a fascinating case, often overlooked.
Yeah. But they played a pivotal role in how Greek warfare evolved. I mean, under Philip II, they went from this relatively minor power to the dominant force in Greece.
So what was it about Philip II that allowed him to transform Macedon so dramatically?
Well, Philip, I mean, he was a remarkable figure, brilliant strategist, a shrewd politician. But I'd say his greatest asset was his ability to learn and adapt.
Okay.
He'd spent time as a hostage in Thebes, actually.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Observing their military tactics, their organization firsthand.
Yeah.
So he recognized the power of that deep phalanx formation, the one that had crushed the Spartans at Leuctra. But he also saw the limitations of traditional Greek warfare.
So he had this unique opportunity to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of all these different systems. What were some of the limitations that he observed?
Well, he saw this over-reliance on the hoplite, for one.
Okay.
A lack of coordination between infantry and cavalry.
Right. And just generally, a lack of cohesion on the battlefield. Battles often just descended into these chaotic melees.
Yeah, yeah.
So Philip, I mean, he wanted to address those weaknesses.
Okay.
Create a more versatile fighting force, one that integrated infantry, cavalry, and specialized units like archers and siege engineers, all working together.
So he wasn't just copying what others had done. He was synthesizing, different elements and innovating.
Yeah.
Creating something new.
Exactly. And his most famous innovation, I mean, was his modification of the phalanx.
Okay.
He increased the length of the spears. I mean, he created the sarissa, this formidable pike that could be, up to 20 feet long.
20 feet. That's incredible. I mean, the impact of hundreds or thousands of those things just sticking out of a tightly packed formation.
It was a fearsome sight. That Macedonian phalanx, I mean, bristling with sarissas. It was almost like an impenetrable wall of steel.
Yeah, it must have been terrifying to face that. But wouldn't those longer pikes, wouldn't they make the phalanx slower?
You're right. There was a trade-off, yeah.
Yeah.
The Macedonian phalanx, it sacrificed some agility for sheer power.
Right.
But Philip, I mean, he compensated for this. He bolstered his cavalry, used them to harass and outflank the enemy, creating openings for his phalanx to exploit.
So it was almost like he was orchestrating the battle.
Yeah.
Right? Using different units to complement each other.
That's right.
And create a more dynamic, adaptable fighting force.
Precisely. And Philip, I mean, he didn't just equip his army with, better weapons. He drilled them relentlessly, instilled discipline and a level of coordination that you just rarely saw in Greek armies.
Yeah.
And he also prioritized logistics. He made sure his troops were well supplied, even on extended campaigns.
So he's thinking several steps ahead.
He was.
Understanding that victory, it depends on more than just brute force, right?
Exactly. He was creating a military machine unlike anything Greece had ever seen.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before the other Greek city-states started to take notice.
And this all kind of comes to a head. It all culminates in the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, right?
Yes.
The clash between Philip's Macedon and a coalition of Greek city-states, including Athens and Thebes.
That's right. Chaeronea, I mean, it was a pivotal moment in Greek history, a decisive victory for Philip, just a testament to his military genius.
Yeah.
I mean, those combined arms tactics proved devastating.
Yeah.
That Macedonian phalanx held firm, repelled all these enemy attacks, while his cavalry, under the command of his young son Alexander, well, they outmaneuvered the enemy and just shattered their lines.
So Chaeronea, this is where Macedonian dominance really begins.
It does, yeah.
Paving the way for Alexander the Great. I mean, who would go on to conquer, vast territories, become one of the most celebrated military commanders in history.
Absolutely. And Alexander, he was a brilliant military leader in his own right. But his success was built on the foundations laid by his father.
Right.
He inherited a well-trained, well-equipped, and very disciplined army. And he took these innovations, he took them even further, refined his father's tactics, adapted them to new terrains, new enemies.
Yeah, I mean, Alexander's conquests were incredible. He led his armies from the deserts of Persia to the mountains of India, forging this empire across continents.
Yeah.
But how did these ancient Greek conflicts, from the Hoplites to the Spartans, the Thebans, and then the Macedonians, how did they shape the world beyond ancient Greece? What's their lasting legacy?
The influences, it's profound,
Yeah.
and it's far-reaching. Their emphasis on discipline, training, tactical innovation. They set a standard that armies would emulate for centuries to come. The Roman legions, for example. They borrowed heavily from Greek military organization and tactics. And even today, military strategists, they still study the battles of Marathon, Thermopylae, Leuctra, seeking insights into leadership, strategy, just the human dynamics of warfare.
And it's amazing to think that these conflicts that were fought, so long ago, that they still have relevance today. So as we wrap up this deep dive into ancient Greek warfare, is there a key takeaway that you want our listeners to kind of ponder?
I think it's important to remember that the story of ancient Greece warfare, it isn't just about battles and conquests.
No.
It's a reflection of the human condition, our capacity for innovation and destruction, our drive to achieve greatness, and our tendency to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
It's a story that continues to resonate today, reminding us that we can learn from history, both its triumphs and its tragedies,
Yeah.
and strive to create a more peaceful and just world.
Well said. For those of you who want to explore this fascinating topic further, we encourage you to listen to the full interview with Roel Koenenandijk on Dan Snow's History Hit podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.